bring up Visual Studio. I'm going to kill that light because that makes it hard to see this. And yeah, this is working, but all right, come on, open up Visual Studio. It's still laggy. This could be fun. Don't want to too dark to go to sleep. Come on, you can do it. Open Visual Studio. Why would this be lagging so much? I should restart and I should have killed the other virtuals. Okay. So even if the screen's set the way it is, it doesn't really fit on the screen very well. So what I want to do this time is File, New, and it's still a project, but it's a different kind of project. Boy, that's slow. This could be, as I said, fun. Yeah. The type of project, if you're way ahead of me, will be a WPF application. And as I said, this is a little bit more sophisticated than a Windows Form application. But it gives you, it still gives you a form, basically. It just gives you a lot more options. It's also the same stuff that Silverlight uses. I'm not sure if they still run Silverlight, but so I'm going to name it assignment 12, and I'm going to do OK. And then I may make this bigger. Just let's see if I, boy. I hope it gets moving better as we start coding. I know it's lots of fun to watch. Now it says that it's loading the designer. And that's basically, it's a form you can drag and drop into, which we will do if it ever loads it. Down here you can see a little bit of the XML, the XAML. I'm going to do things with the property window because I think it's easier for you, but anything I do in the property windows I could do by writing XML down here. And anything I do in the properties windows will automatically be translated into the XML. We have, I'm going to open the toolbox. It's hard when things are this small, but in general, for the first time ever, if I go up to like all WPF controls, we have tools over here. We have buttons, we have calendars, we have checkboxes, we have a combo box. I mean, there's all sorts of different tools over here. Does that make sense so far? This little box, which you can barely see, is the window. You can make it bigger or smaller, you know, and you can actually color it, which maybe I should just so it shows up on the screen. If you don't have Toolbox, you can go to View Toolbox. And it might just be over to the side.
Yeah. Toolbox.
Yeah.
Toolbox.
So just probably WPF. Well, I don't know. Let's see something here. Toolboxes. That's toolbars. We don't want toolbars. We want toolbars. Well, it should be there, but I think it's actually over here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So just click it, and then do like all WPF controls. And then if you want it to stay on there, there's a little pin over here. I'll probably pin and unpin it as we go, just to keep more room. Now this is going to be a tip calculator. I think we've done that before. It's like my go-to every time, like the very first program I ever wrote in Android was a tip calculator, you know, just sort of a fairly easy thing to do, but it lets you do a couple of things. So one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to go get a label. And this label is basically just, it should be alphabetical. There it is. This label is just going to be there to say, boy, that's tiny. I wonder if I can make that bigger. My other fonts and things are bigger. This one is tiny. I'm just going to real quickly look at the I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. It's not web forms. It's not really Windows forms either. XAML designer. General doesn't have much. Fonts. Not a, well, it didn't do anything. Never mind. That says label, right? And what I want to do with the label is I'm just going to say this is a properties window. Should be over the where it says properties. If not, you can already what a way to be more visible. Yeah. So you have to have something selected. You have to have the label selected.
How did you make that?
What? I dragged it over from here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There's a zoom on the bottom line. That 133% on the bottom line. Of
Bottom.
your screen.
Oh,
Maybe not
oh.
zoom it. I don't know.
Well, that actually is
Zoom
zooming.
the whole thing.
I think that's zooming. Let's do 150. See, that's just zooming this.
But on the top.
Yeah, that one I think is what we need to zoom. Let's go back. I'm going to bring this to 100% if I can. Now, the trouble with it and the reason why I was doing that is I was trying to fit it into window. But that's better, right? Interbase amount. So the label is a control. You can drag it on there. Now you can get, if particularly, notice how there's a grid down here? And when I drag the label on, it says label, name equals label, content entered, the base amount. Again, I could have just written it that. And actually, when I do this on my own, I tend to just write it in the XML. You can with this grid. So everything inside the window, there's a little dotted line here is a grid. There are other layouts, but I'll be sophisticated if you want. You can define. So I'm not. We're just dragging things in, and basically when you do that, it gives you kind of loop positioning. So and once the next thing I'm going to do is text box. So here, there are ways, there are lines, there are guidelines to help. Text box selected. If I go to property, the name is just text. To name it, I just did, and just empty out. So like, and then where it says just the thing with the thing, properties are the thing that's selected.
Yeah. So, sign on.
It should be.
But I'm sorry.
That's actually a property window system.
Yeah, I'm getting into the same window.
We'll just click back to and then if you, yeah. Those are program properties as opposed to.
And so, I'm sorry, where is it's not this properties?
It's down here.
Oh, okay, so,
And if you'd like, you can drag it out. So what you have to do is if you,
oh.
so the label is selected right now.
Yeah,
And the content is where you can write that.
okay, so that's where it is.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay.
It takes a while. One of the reasons
Oh.
why I don't start the course having you make forms is that there's a lot of little things go into making the form. It just kind of confuse the idea for the programming. Did you get it okay? Doing all right? You can. Alright, so if you right click on the properties. Go to view. Yeah. Combination. There you go. Any window you lose, you can usually get back through view. This is, particularly if you have like these nice screens, if you want to pull the property windows out, you can do that too. They're floatable if you want. Sometimes that's easier. Mine is so cramped, everything is a pain here. But typically in the Microsoft world, they'll have 3 screens, so they'll pull the properties over here. So that's the only property I'm going to change on the text box, though, is its name. And then I just got rid of the text so that it doesn't show up. I mean, that's all I did.
Only the name change?
It was, yeah, so the name I called it TXT amount. You don't have to name them the same as me, but you do have to remember your names.
What else there is? Opacity?
Well, if you're put a panel in there to group them, but if you don't do that, then the form is a grouper. There's video buttons in, and in there from the toolbox, and these will be for this. And in the properties again, just for the content, which here is the text, I'm going to say 10%. And I'm going to call it, what do I want to name it? Radio button. I'm going to do RDB 10%. I'm using a rather old style of naming here. What do they call it? Pascal type? It's actually discouraged. I only use it for things like text boxes and radio buttons. It's where you do some kind of abbreviation of what kind of object it is before the name. So this is 10%, and I gave it a name RDB, which is just radio.
I think my properties this one blue.
So what were you saying about grouping?
So if you there's a couple of ways to group. One is to put a panel. Another is yeah. So idea button, which we're not going to. Going to do is if you want to go ahead. Oh, again, what do already? Yeah. This will be 50. And the content will be 15%. Content is just the label. And that's actually all I need for that. And then I will do another one for 20%. So I'll just do it RDB 20%. And I'll change the content to 20%. One of the things you'd want to do if you're doing this without somebody telling you exactly what to do is you'd want to think about it ahead of time. It actually doesn't, it actually is probably a picture of what you think your form is going to look like before you actually go in here and start messing around. It just would save you some time. Yeah. No, it's fine. I mean, this is just a label, right? Actually, the name is the only thing that matters, and you can name it what you want as long as you remember what you named it. Yeah.
I've somehow managed to lose my property box.
So if you do view again,
View.
view properties.
So sorry. Okay. All right, thank you.
It's really easy. I mean, if you accidentally click on the little X, they go away. I'm going to do one other radio button, which will be for other. And I'll review this before we move on to the code part. And what I post on Uh, 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 so the idea is they can enter, if they want, they can enter their own tip. So I'm going to call this txt other, and I'll get rid of the text there too, so it's just an empty text box. Now, some of you are much better designers than me, so you can probably do better forms. There's only a couple more controls I'm going to put on here. Later, if we have time when we're done, I will show you how to make it pretty, at least. If not pretty, at least gaudy. So basically we have a label, and this label I didn't bother to name really or do anything with because it is just it's just informational, right? This is a text box to enter the base amount. They can choose 10, 15, 20, or they can enter their own tip amount. So what else do you think we need? What? Tax, yeah, I was just gonna hard code tax.
Okay.
You could enter it. So we need to show the total, and so I'm gonna add a button way up at the top. And this is something that we haven't done before. I've mentioned it a couple of times. So I'm gonna go to properties, and I'm just gonna change the content of button to calculate, and I will call it BTN calculate. So buttons, when you're dealing with forms, when we were dealing with console, let's start with consoles. We controlled how things happened. We controlled the flow. Everything moved, top to bottom. Basically, you called your methods or whatever, and it controlled the flow. In a form, the user controls what happens. They control it by clicking on things, right? Those are create events. When you click on a button, that's what basically causes most of the code to execute. It is possible to make code execute on a click on these. I'm not going to. It's actually kind of annoying if a whole bunch of things happen when you change the radio button. But right? Becomes multi-line. Right, so display here, like your amount, your tax, your total, your tip, etc. I'll call it label result. BL result. I think that's all. I'm going to the label there. Here. Basically, what we up. We text box. We have a calculate values. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to, so just to show you can keep doing this, in the Solution Explorer or project up there, I'm just going to do add class class. I don't know that there's any difference between these two classes. I'm not sure why they're both there. They both have the same description. Or actually, just like with the content. So in the fields would we need here? We're going to keep we're going to count, right? Let's make it lowercase. You want to do this the shortcut way?
Yeah.
All right, so let's do public double amount get set. Okay. And then we can do public double tip percent. We'll do get set. Okay, so those are our two properties. I said I would just hard code tax, so I'm going to do private const double tax equals 0.092. How's that? I have no idea what the actual tax is, and it varies depending on what you're doing. Restaurant taxes are actually more than sales taxes. So does that make sense for fields and properties? Remember that this is a shortcut, and it's a Microsoft only shortcut. Don't try to do it in Java, it won't work. Okay, so the methods are just going to be one to calculate the tip, one to calculate the tax, and one to calculate the total, right? Does that make sense? I'm going to make them public so we could call them if we want, although I'm going to show you a different way to output. Public, so let's say double. We'll call it tip amount, or let's calculate, I'll calculate tip. And there's all sorts of things that you could do to make this better, but I'm just going to say return amount times tip percent. This means that you have to have gotten it put in there. And then I'm just going to do public double calculate tax. And it'll be exactly pretty much the same. Return amount times tax, or constant. Does that make sense? I'll give you a second. This will all be posted, and it will be on GitHub, so if you get lost. And then we just need the total. Yeah.
So constants you do all uppercase.
The convention is to do them all uppercase. Yeah, that nothing makes you do it, but that's the convention.
And then regular variables.
The regular variables are usually lowercase, start with lowercase. The reason this starts with a capital is that it's a property. So the properties usually start with a capital and the underlying variable is a lowercase. And what happens if you do this shortcut is that the compiler actually creates an underlying variable amount with the lowercase thing. If you make this lowercase, then what the underlying variable is amount1. Because it doesn't, for some reason it doesn't just switch the case if it's if this was lower. That's because we're creating properties here. This is like a shortcut for a method. Methods usually start with a capital letter, except in Java. In Java, it's reversed. In Java, methods start with lowercase. But in both languages, I mean, constants are always letters. And it could vary. These are just conventions. They're not absolute rules. So sometimes a company will tell you to do it differently, you know. But they do usually a company will give you a style sheet in your code because they want consistency. They want naming. They'll give you naming conventions, and they'll give you case and things how they want the things. Some people like, instead of the usual like calculate tip, they might want calculate underscore tip. You know, it's up to who you're working for, basically.
So property is uppercase, but what did you call the lowercase?
Variables are usually lowercase, yeah. So let's do a total, and I'm going to do the total a little bit. An easy way to do this would just be to call the calculate tax and the calculate tip and add them to the amount, but I'm not going to do that because of another thing I want to do. So I'm going to say calculate total. So I'm going to return amount plus, and this is really awkward, and I'm sure there's an algebraic way to simplify this, but I'm going to do amount times tip percent. Plus amount. The parentheses are probably unnecessary. And I'm doing this rather than calling the methods because I want to do a toString thing. And if I do these with a toString, and if this one calls the other ones, I'll end up with a double call. Order of operations, which I never stress that much. The parentheses here are unnecessary. But it makes it clear maybe what's happening. Because in the order of operations, it would multiply these two, and then it would multiply these two, and then it would addition, so the result is the same. But again, the parentheses make it clearer to me. So that's our total. And then there's one other thing that I'm going to add to this, which is what we will use, actually. So are we ready?
Yes.
Okay. I know I go kind of fast, especially when I get here late and I'm kind of in a... So if I go too fast, let me know. If I go too slow, let me know. So let me do... I am going to do public override toString. Now, I think I talked about this before. Did I like once? So every object, actually, not that you care, but every object can have it attached to it. And what it does by default is it just gives you the name of the class. So if I do this, it says return base toString. That means return the parent's version of toString. What it would return is the name of the class. It would say tip. That's what it would return. But you can override that, which means you can make it behave differently. It still will be called toString, but it will behave differently. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it return the basically the stuff we want to display, you know, the amount, the tip, the tax, and the total. So I'm just going to, and I'm going to show you an object which you don't have to do because you can do this all with concatenation, but there's a neat object that .NET has called a string builder. I'm just going to do string builder. I'm going to call it SB equals new string builder. So this is a built-in object, and what it is designed to do is what it says. It basically will let you build up a complex string. And it's easier than concatenating. Concatenating works just fine. But this actually makes it a little bit easier. Does that make sense? So the way you use a string builder, I'm going to do SB dot. I'm going to append a line. That means it has a line break. There's append, which doesn't have a line break, and there's append line, which does. And I'm going to, in the parentheses, in quotes, I'm going to say amount. And then I am going to concatenate in here a little bit. I'm going to do plus amount. The amount was entered. To show you how this works. I'm also going. Each one of these will be an append line. I'm going to do the tip. It's actually up to you how you would want to display these. Plus, calculate tip. No dot there. And I'm going to do a toString. I might actually need to do toString up above too. If you want to make this look nicer, you can put that formatting stuff in there. Do you remember that? So I could do, let's do a $sign. I'm going to do a hash, comma, 1, 2, 3 hashes, dot 2. So is that $sign there? These are optional digits. If there are thousands, put commas. And always have 2 decimal places. I'm going to copy that and put it in this toString also. Again, that's purely for looks. And then I'm going to do the tax. It'll be just like this. Notice I'm putting a space after these. If you don't put a space after these, they're going to ram right into them. And I'll do calculate tax. And I'll do toString. And then I'll paste that format in there too. We're almost done. I'm just going to do the total next. So SB append line total. And I'll do the toString and paste that in there too. And then the very last thing, this has always struck me as weird. So I'm going to do return SB, and you have to turn it to string. You think that it is a string, it's a string builder, but you have to turn the SB to string. So this is, you could do this all with concatenation and line breaks and stuff, but this is kind of a nice way to do it. And that's the whole class, and then we'll go back to the form. I'll give you a minute. So all we're doing is I'll put in the amount, the tip, the tax. So when I do the calculations, I can just call toString and have all of that ready to display. Do you guys need to go over anything else in the class? You guys got it? Yeah.
So it's the override.
So the override is because this toString exists in the parent. Every class that you make inherits from object. We haven't talked a lot about inheritance. It's kind of, but you can take a class and you can extend it. In object, public string toString just returns the name of the object. But if you override it, it means you're going to give it a new behavior, but keep the name the same. It's part of what they call polymorphism, in that it allows something that has the same name to behave differently in different contexts. And toString is one that's real common to override. In fact, a lot of people tell you should always override toString for a class. Yeah. Questions on it? You look like you have questions.
Mine is, got a lot of red lines underneath it. I'm just trying to see where I arrive.
One of the things, if there's lots of red lines, it's possible that you're
That,
so it's good up until
I know.
oh, you know what, this one though is just
What? I'm sorry.
so toString has to, even if you don't put the formatting in it, it has to have the open and close parentheses. Your last toString doesn't have an open and close
Oh,
parentheses.
okay. Okay.
That's why it's correcting it when you're putting the other thing in, because then you also add the parentheses. All right, so let's go back to the form. Are you guys ready? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click the calculate button. Now you could type this in, but this is the easiest way to do it. If you double click it fairly quickly, it'll go to the code window and it will give you the event for the button. This is the click event for the button. If you just type this in here, it won't work. It's a two-part thing. This is one part in the example. So let me find the button calculate. It has at the very bottom here, click equals button click. This has to be in the XML as well as the code in the C#. And the easiest way to get it in both places is to double click the button. Otherwise, you have to manually go in and type this and then type the other. Does that make sense? So you have a tab up there, main.
Yeah, I got that. So if I double click it,
You should double click that button.
double click, I'm unable to open it.
Why? Okay. Why is it unable to have it? Let's look at your this one. Ooh, you have a whole bunch of code there. You shouldn't have put this in the. Yeah, you shouldn't have put it in the example CS. Should have been over here.
Oh, let me play it.
Yeah, so copy, make the tip class over there, just copy and paste it over there. This class, and if those of you doing the 172, their web pages work the same way. You have your form, and then you have your code behind for that form. So I'm going to do this outside the button, I think, and then I'll call it in the button. It's a better practice to do that because it's a real pain to try to call this method if you need to call it from somewhere else, because it has these things, the object sender and any events that are being sent with it. This is all events have sort of this, they have what object is sending the event, and you can use that actually, because you could use the same event for multiple objects if you want.
Sorry.
This, I double clicked on the button.
Doesn't.
So is yours not working when you double click it? Is it saying anything? There you go.
Well, it's not coming out of the over here.
Well, it's so.
There
Double click is a little bit, I'm not sure what the timing on that is. It has to be pretty fast though. All right, so let's see what are things that we need to do. So I'm going to, let's call this private void calculate, I guess. And then we'll do the two curly braces. And what I'm going to, so we're going to do all the stuff we need. So what do we need to do if you think about it from the form? We need to get the amount, right? We need to get the percentage. And then we need to pass those over to the tip class, do the calculations, and get it back. So first thing actually I'm going to do, just so it's available to us, I'm going to do tip T equals new tip. I'm going to declare my tip class so it's available to us. I didn't do a constructor. We could have easily added a constructor. We could have done other things to the tip, but we'll just have to pass it through the properties. So I'm going to do double amount. Guess I could spell it out. And I am going to say pool good amount. I'm going to do a try-parse. Equals double. Can't type. Try-parse. What was our, it was txt amount dot text out amount. So we're going to try it to see if it's a good amount in the text box. The dot text, so the text box is the object. The dot text is a property of that object, and that property is what's containing the text, the actual text. So you have to always do dot text to get the text out of the text box. So whatever it was we type in there is in the text, and it's going to try to parse it. And if it is good, it'll assign it to amount. So then I'm going to do a quick if underneath this. If, and I'm going to just say good amount. So if it's good, right, with the Boolean, if you just state the Boolean, it assumes true. If good amount, then I'm going to say t dot amount equals amount. So if what we entered is a decent double, then I'm just going to assign it to the amount in the tip object using the property, right? Does that make sense? Then if it's not good, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, this is a neat thing you got with forms. I'm going to do a message box. I'm going to do message box.show, enter a valid amount. And then I'm going to do a couple of other little things. I'm going to text amount clear. I'm going to clear it out of whatever bad value you did. And I'm going to say text amount, and I'll stop here in a second. Focus. What do you think the focus does? And I'm going to return. Stop it for a while. So we're gonna show, if the amount isn't good, I'm gonna show a message box. Yeah,
So the message box that show, is that equal to like console writing?
well, it's kind of, except you know how when you do it, it actually will pop up a little square box window that says, it has enter a valid amount. Now, there's a whole bunch of other stuff we could do with the message box. We could put a warning sign in it, an alert. There's all sorts of little icons and stuff you can add to it. It has it has multiple overloads. One of them is just a string, which is what I'm doing. But there's others to say what kind of message box it is. But you could add buttons to it, like if you want that okay or something. Okay. You have a question?
No, I was just gonna say this focus just put the cursor back.
Yes, it does. You push the cursor back as well as template. Do you have a text? The text about, let's see what you name text about. Just go back to Windows. Oh, nice. And you don't have a text box. You don't have a text box beside your label.
Oh, here.
No, it was.
Yeah, I mean, so like she has like a text box. So there's a label and then a text. I think you named your label text amount. All right, so then we need to get the tip percent. I should probably deal with if there's nothing selected, but we'll maybe ignore that. I'm going to say, actually what would probably be good is just to make a new method for that. Do you want to make a new method for that? So I'm going to say private double get tip amount. Or tip percent. So anyway, what we're going to do here, so I'm going to double tip percent. I'm going to declare a variable called tip percent, make it equal to 0 first. And then I'm going to say if, so we did our RDBs, right? So if RDB 10% dot is checked, equals true. And I do not know why you have to say equals true, but it doesn't seem to work if you don't. And then I'm going to say if that's true, then tip percent is equal to 0.1. And then I'm going to do the same thing. If RDB 15% equals true, or is checked equals true. Tip percent equals 0.15. And then exactly the same. In fact, if you want, you could paste. If RDB 20%, and this would be 0.2. Does that make sense? Now with ifs, I did not put curly braces there. You can get away with that as long as there's only one line under it. Right? If there's only one line, you don't have to do curly braces, but if it makes you more comfortable, it might be a good idea to put curly braces. Because on the else, I'm going to have to do curly braces. Because the other option, when else, it'll just be if RDB other is checked equals true. And this one I'm going to do curly braces because we need to do a couple of things here. I should probably try parse it. So I'm going to pull good percent equals double try parse text other text out tip percent. Okay, so that'll, again, if it's a valid tip percent, if this is true, it'll assign it to tip percent. And then, so the other thing that we need to do is we could, if it's not valid, we should probably give them another message box, right? So if this, oops, wrong place. So I'm going to say if not good message box. Actually, that's a problem. I don't know if I can do. Here, where we call it. The other thing I'm going to do here is if greater than, this is a bit arbitrary, then I'm going to take tip percent anybody know what that line means? Yeah, we're going to divide it. We're going to divide it by 100 if it's greater than 1. So the highest tip I'm allowing is 100%. Not many people tip 100%, although some people do, actually. My daughter owns a restaurant, and some person tipped one of their waiters about 200% of the bill. I think because he felt sorry for her because she was pregnant. Working hard, but whatever. But I'm arbitrarily not going to allow a tip of greater than 100, because the thing is that they're likely to put in, they're in the tip box, they're more likely to put in 12 or something than they are to say 0.12, right? So we just want to divide it by 100 and make sure it's a percent. And then I'm not going to deal with the bad case, like if it's just not a good number right now. I'm going to say return tip percent. So I did that as a little separate method. Do you guys need a minute with that, or you got it? Okay. And we'll call that from up above where we're doing the other calculations. It was just, yeah.
And if you come in at the very beginning, when I double click the cost. First I would click the calculator.
Oh, I'm not sure if that's what it's called.
Right here, she has.
I think she just named it. Oh, radio button?
It kind of does that automatically.
PTN.
You just named it differently.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh. That's it. Yeah, you just named your button. It should be fine. Yeah.
Still.
So which one, let's see,
This one.
let's test it.
So I just, yeah, I just.
If you change the C between,
And then this one. Oh, I changed it back.
okay, so this is, so that's T next to,
I did.
I don't know.
Like that.
Yeah, well,
Maybe rebuild.
Oh,
Just hit
oh,
build
Bill.
and build solution. Sometimes those will go well. Put something here.
I couldn't see what it was right now. That one very nice label. Oh, there, okay. My eyes were, okay, my eyes were crossing on that one.
Yeah, no,
Thank you
it's
so
pretty
much.
tiny. It's hard to see.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Okay, so let's look at your form. Yeah. So let's look again at this one. So that could- Should be select.
I was trying to.
Oh, yeah, no. Go ahead and just retype that text. But that
Oh,
sometimes. Now, you used, actually, let's look back at it. Let's look at that. I was thinking maybe you did actually. One last thing. Let's look at. So change the name of this.
oh, okay, so that's.
That's,
So we just.
yeah.
This is technical.
And let's see if there are good temps to find this.
It's probably, it's probably how you make it.
That one is just in temps.
Yeah.
That, I think that's. Well, maybe not. Yeah, radio, but,
Open that and read it.
The label.
Yeah, see what the name is.
But it seems like these aren't lining up for.
Yeah, click on it. So that is other.
Oh,
I
you
don't
don't have one.
Maybe it's for memory. Maybe it's memory.
You need them.
One more label.
Because it should be automatically updating over here. And it doesn't say.
Label. Is that label?
This one is the text box.
Yeah, that's next question.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, one of the things you can do is manually do it like that. Although positioning. That one should be okay.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'll take that.
Yeah, I will troubleshoot these, and as I said, I will post. Let's finish up though. So up here in the calculate, I'm not going to do, there's a couple of little tests and things I should do, but I'm just going to say T dot tip percent equals get tip percent. And that should probably have a cap if I follow my own naming conventions. So there's a couple of things you should do around here to make sure that you don't get a zero. I guess zero is a legitimate tip amount, but you know, there are some things you should do there. And then the only other thing we have to do is that label, because we've given it the tip amount, we've given it the amount. So I can say label result dot content. For some reason in WPF, labels have content and text box have text. So it's basically going to be T dot to string, if I can ever get the dot. And it should display all the stuff that we have. And then I'll show you a quick clear and exit. But first I'll see if this works. So what I did is I just called this method. So this method will determine what's the selected tip amount. And then it will pass it back to this. So now the class, the tip class has the percent and the amount. So it's ready to go. And then I can call the toString method and it should display, you know, the amount, the tip, amount of the tip, the amount of the tax, and the total. Shall we see if it works? And then I can walk back through. I was hoping, you know, you guys would have time to work on this, but the quarter has just gone by fast, and there were a lot of projects there. So here's my form, and again, I could make it a little prettier. Let me pull it down. I can show you later how to make it pretty. So with base amount, I'm just going to do 100 just for a test. And let's say 15%. And I calculate. And it's not working. Why is it not working?
I think you need to call calculate.
Oh, yeah, I forgot one line. Thank you. I need to call calculate from the click event. Because I didn't do it in the click event. So now it'll work. So I'll do 100, 15%, and then it gives me the amount. I'll do it again. I'll show you. So I don't have any clears here, but if I change this to 20% and recalculate, notice it does 20. And if I do other, and I'm going to say, do I want to be generous? Let's say 25. And it says $25, and you know, that does it. So let me show that again. Wow, it shrunk my thing. So the part that I'd forgotten the first time, you need to call the method. So we declare the tip, we declare the amount, we check to see if the amount is good. And then if it's not good, if it is good, we assign it to the tip object. If it's not good, we give them an error message. So I should show you the error message. Then we call the percent, get tip percent down here and assign it there and then show the results. The get tip percent, it just checks to see if the radio buttons are checked. If we had grouped them, we could loop through them. You know, I didn't group them, I treated them individually. We could have looped through them if we created it. And then see which one was checked. So if one of these is checked, we give a value. If it's other, we check the text box. It's not fatal if they get something garbage in there because it'll just be 0. But, you know, that may not have been what they meant, but that's what it'll do. Where?
I got one.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
Is that L result or is that?
I named mine label result. It's that big label I made.
Oh, okay.
So whatever you named it.
Okay.
And you can find its name on the, you know, in the main window. So that label result is right here.
Yeah.
I got arrow.
Yeah, there are probably lots of errors. I'll come look in a second. As I said, I will post 2. Again, it's sort of the pattern. One of the things, if you can get to do it, is try not to follow me too slavishly. Follow the pattern. So these all have exactly the same pattern, right? So it's just a matter of doing, you know, determining if it's checked and this value. This one is a little different, but basically what it is if it's checked, you need to go check the text box for the value. And okay, let me show the message box. And then, as I said, I'll troubleshoot and I will post. I may post this on the blog now because it'll be faster than getting into GitHub. But let's do, I'm going to run it again. And then I'm going to do a couple of quickie buttons. So let's say I don't enter a base amount, or I enter a base amount that looks like 100. Okay, so that's an invalid number. So when I calculate that, notice it gives me a message box that says enter a valid amount. When I do OK, it clears out the text box and puts the cursor there so I can enter a valid number. And you could make that message box much prettier, just to say. If I do something like that in that label and click on other, well, I don't have a valid amount. Let's do a valid amount. It just gives a tip of 0. That's what the try parse does. It doesn't crash, it just gives a tip of 0. Now, I don't know what happens if I don't select any tip. I think it still comes out as 0, right? Because I assigned it as 0 at the beginning. You could pre-select when you're designing the form. You could say that one of them is selected by default if you want. Does it make sense, sort of? The main things that I want, I mean, even if you don't get the form working, is to get the idea of how a form works, you know? Get the idea that you have controls, buttons, usually. There are other ways you can activate events, but they're event-driven rather than programmer-driven. So I'm going to add a couple more buttons real quickly, this will be fast. So I don't want data sources. I want toolbox. There we go. So I'll add another button. This button will be for clear. So I'll go to the properties. I'll just call it BTN clear. And I'll just say clear. Okay. And then I'm going to add another button, which will be exit. And I'll call it BTN exit. There are other neat things you can do with this that I'm not doing. If you do, I think if we do an ampersand in front of the X, then you can do Control X to activate the button. You know, there you can create menus. You know, you can do lots of neat things. So I'm going to double click the clear button. Double click it. Okay, so there we got the clear event. Best practice, although it's easy to write it in there. I'm going to do private void clear. And so we got, right, the text box. So I'm going to just do text amount dot clear. That just clears it out. I'm going to do text other clear, just in case it's not. I'm going to, for the radio buttons, I'm gonna just, doesn't matter what order, but I'm going to say is checked equals false. So none of them will be checked. Again, if you wanted one of them to be checked, you could set it. I'm going to copy that and do 15. I think 15, did I do lowercase? That's just a typo, but I need to match. No, maybe it is capped. Whoa, that's supposed to be Control V, not V. Control V. 20%. And then this is the other. The very last thing is my label result. I don't think labels have a clear event. I know, but I'm not sure when I read that, I'm not sure if that's what I want. Which should work. Are you using that one? You can see if it, what?
I said I can try it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. And then I'm just going to call clear from here. So now we can clear out the form. So what I did is I just cleared the text boxes, right? I did the, I set all of the is checked properties to false so that none of them are checked. And I cleared out the label that had the results. And exit. I'm just going to double click the exit button. When you only have one form, all you have to do is close the form. If you have multiple forms, well, so I'm going to do this close. I don't want to look. This is just I'm just curious. Application Yeah. So this is actually the better way. This closes the form. Current.exit, I think. Oh, this is an event. Never mind. Shut down. All right, so application current shutdown closes the application if you have multiple forms. So, you know, if you had lots of forms open and you wanted to shut everything down, then it's application.current.shutdown. Or you can just close the form if it's just one form. So let's see if those work. I will post these. I will troubleshoot these for you if you want. So I'm just going to put like 128.98. We'll do 20%. Calculate. Clear. Exit. So they all worked. So I know a lot of you've got little issues going. Why don't I post this up on the blog real quick? Did it work?
No, because you have to set it, like, you have to set it, parameters.
Yeah.
I was like, that's just how it's set.
Yeah, this is easier. All right, so
I'm waiting for troubleshooting this. Just one.
I'm going to post to the blog. Oh, shoot. Did it end?